I will not live like that.
These are very sophisticated devices. With enough time, they will give you...
60% of my mobility? No, I will not be seen lurching through corridors like some half-Klingon machine. The object of ridicule and disgust.
Hi, Editing Maggie here, coming in just before we get started to give a content warning for medical trauma, suicidal ideation, and suicide. So if that is something you don't want to hear, I suggest you skip to the next episode. Other than that, I hope that you enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome back to Fully Functional, a TNG podcast. I'm Maggie, joined by Jeff and Dory.
Yo.
Jeff and I are veteran Trekkies, and Dory is a rookie Trekkie, and we are taking her on her first journey through Star Trek: The Next Generation. Today we're discussing the Season 5 episode Ethics, and the original air date is February 29th, 1992, a leap year.
Ooh.
And as always, we'll take it to Dory for the recap.
Okay, so... all right, we start off in a cargo bay. It's Worf and Geordi, and they're investigating a leak or something. They were playing poker, and I wrote in my notes, apparently Geordi cheats at cards, but then like a few minutes later, he's like, no, I only because of his visor, he can see through the cards, but he's like, oh, I only actually look after the hand is done. So like, okay, Geordi.
It's okay, I turn it off.
I'm gonna trust you.
Well, he does say that Worf brought the deck, and I'm sure, because he says, like, next time don't bring a deck that's transparent to, what was it?
Infrared light.
Infrared light, yeah.
Which...
I was about to say, because I got ultraviolet and infrared mixed up, so I'm like, ultra red, that's not right.
But like, the problem that you run into that with is, like, infrared light doesn't pass through paper, so what the fuck was it made out of?
Yeah, I have no idea.
It was radioactive.
Like, maybe they were plastic, like, transparent cards or something with printing on them?
Maybe. I have no idea.
Okay, so Geordi isn't really getting any readings for this leak. There's like a crap ton of barrels, and I thought a barrel was going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
For the record,
it
Dory,
does not.
that barrel and Worf not liking the barrel has been become a meme. And there are so many references to it, and it is really funny. Not like in Star Trek, just people making memes about Worf not liking the barrel. Like the barrel sneaking up on Worf, or like Worf having a fucking showdown with the barrel, that sort of thing. It's always the barrel versus Worf.
Worf v. Barrel.
Worf v. Barrel, Dawn of Justice.
Okay, so then... I just popped in my head both Worf and the barrel's mom's names are Martha.
Oh my god. Remove Martha from the
Sorry,
room.
I still think that's so funny that was a real plot point. I thought that was a
look,
joke.
I've been arguing with Snyder
anyways.
fans lately. Let's not get into that. It's
Okay, yeah. Anyways, okay. So we see that there is a hole in one of the barrels, and it is like letting gas out, and so it starts to like deflate basically, and the barrel on top of the leaking barrel falls on Worf, and hits him pretty fucking hard. So medical emergency in cargo bay 3. So Worf wakes up and tries to get up, and he's like, Dr. C, I don't want to, I'm not going to leave without your permission, but this restraining field is not necessary. And then Dr. C's like, Ugh.
Yeah, about that restraining field.
Yeah, I wrote Dr. C with her voluminous hair tells Worf there is no restraining field. So as it turns out, Worf can't move his legs because the container shattered 7 of his vertebrae, and crushed his spinal cord. There's no way to repair this kind of injury. And to me, that was like surprising for the level of shit they can do on the show. And
look, they needed a thing.
I mean,
they tried to explain it that like there's not that much advancement in this area when it comes to like Klingons,
which makes sense,
and stuff in Klingon America.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So then they call a specialist named Dr. Toby Russell, who's a neurospecialist, comes on the ship, and for a very quick second, I legit thought it was Dr. P. For like the wide shot, I was like,
short hair at first glance.
But no, it is
not curly though.
No,
yeah,
instead
it's
middle-aged Kate McKinnon.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I can see that. Yeah. Up close, I was like, oh, wow, that is not Dr. P. Okay, so Toby turns out to be a Dr. C fangirl, which was cute.
I mean, everyone should be.
Was cute. Yes, of course. So Toby read Dr. C's paper on cybernetic regeneration and Dr. C's ideas on bioactive interfaces border on revolutionary. I don't know what any of that shit means, but party on, Wayne, I guess.
Oddly enough, it's actually a reference to something like a very small piece of dialogue that Dr. C had, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 seasons ago. Yeah, it's not important. It's just
a throwback.
Yeah, very, very small throwback.
So Dr. C reached out to the Klingon medical division, and their solution is death.
Yes.
Just let him fucking
Kill
die. So there's not a lot of research on neurological trauma done with Klingons. So, yeah, that was upsetting. So Riker comes in to visit Worf, and he's like, oh, you look pretty good for someone who's been eating sickbay food for 3 days. And Worf's under a trauma blanket, or he borrowed it from Troy. It's just like a holographic blanket. So Worf has a personal favor, and it requests a personal favor from Riker, and Riker's like, name it. And Worf's like, help me die. And Riker's like, name something else.
Yeah.
So Worf says when a Klingon can no longer stand and face his enemies as a warrior, when he becomes a burden to his friends and family, it is time for the Hegba?
Hekba,
yes,
I think.
Hekba.
I don't. Yeah, Hekba.
Hekba. So it's time for him to die.
Wake up, time to die.
I just was like, Jesus Christ, like, is anybody fucking told Alexander? But we do. Yes, someone has told Alexander, but not yet. So then Worf's like, remember how he's basically like, remember how I've been like Team Riker all these years? Now it's your turn to be Team Worf.
Yeah.
And it is very heartbreaking. It is, it really, it sucks. I like, so sad and just upsetting, and Worf. So, then Dr. C and Toby are talking about Klingon anatomy, and apparently Klingons have 23 ribs, 2 livers, 8-chambered heart, and double-lined neural pia mater, in which I looked that up because I did not know what a pia mater is, and it from Google, composed of delicate connective tissue and has many tiny blood vessels / allows blood vessels to pass through and nourish the brain. Thanks, Google. So then Toby says, I've never seen so many unnecessary redundancy in one body. And Dr. C is like, unnecessary? The Klingons refer to it as the Brecklul.
As something Klingon, that's for sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Almost every vital function in their bodies has a built-in redundancy in case any primary organ or system fails. Then Toby goes, it's a good design in theory, but in practice, all the extra organs means it's just means just that much more to go wrong.
I mean, that makes sense when you've got something that's like more complicated. But this isn't more complicated. This is redundancies. They're literally backups. If a backup fails or a main one fails, that doesn't mean that there's more to go wrong. It means that there is something to protect if something does go wrong.
Yeah. I think it gets complicated with, like, organic matter, though. Because, like, so for example, it's like if you have 2 livers, that's like, basically, you have 2 livers to worry about getting cancer in.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
You know? Because they're just... You have, like, 2 livers to worry about, like, liver disease. You have, you know, all this shit.
Yeah. So then Toby explains that she's been experimenting with DNA... Oh boy, what did I write? Based generators. And she shows Dr. C a geotronic
It's a word they made up.
replicator. I can't read what I wrote. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
So it reads the DNA coding of damaged organs, translates that into a specific set of replicant instructions, and then begins to grow a replacement.
For the record,
Cool.
Dory.
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's basically like an organ replicator.
Yeah, it's like a 3D printer for...
Yep.
Literally that.
Yeah.
So, okay, to be perfectly fair here, so Ronald D. Moore wrote the screenplay for this. He's, like, known as the Klingon
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he flat out said that he found writing for this episode really difficult, specifically because of the amount of medical jargon that he had to make up for it. Well, not make up, but like research and make sure that like it somewhat made sense even when they were using jargon, and that it would still make sense to the audience while 2 doctors were speaking to each other about things that they were supposedly experts in. So like it was difficult to write. I think it was successful, at least for me. I don't know if it was successful for you.
It was, we'll say, fine. I don't
sense.
understand a lot of... Well, yes, I did understand what they were doing.
Okay, good.
Yes,
That's what's
yes.
important.
Okay, so then Toby's like, what if we replace Worf's entire spinal column? And I was on board until she's like, yeah, haven't done this on a humanoid yet. I think it was like a 37% success rate in this simulation. And I was like, girl, that's not a great statistic.
Okay, wait. No, let's be perfectly fair here. They definitely, like, the way that the doctor treats this is very much as like a, oh, well, it's 100p or nothing. But honestly, a lot of really complicated surgery has a less than average success rate. So like 37% for something experimental is actually really good.
But in a simulator?
Okay, yeah, that's fair. But she's saying that she flat out says giving the patient those odds is like out of the question, and it's like it certainly isn't out of the question now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I totally, because her
like
attitude about it seems like too cavalier.
No, I definitely agree with that. Toby is wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just put that out there. They definitely went out of their way to make sure that like the issue is presented as like openly as possible with a lot of different viewpoints, which is great. Toby is wrong because she is presented as somebody who is doing this on the fly rather than like with a lot of proper research and whatnot. So
Yeah.
we're running into that problem. I just think the specific point of this is a low percentage isn't really good enough.
Yeah. There's definitely like there's a lot of surgeries where the percentages like are that low and stuff, but the doctors usually aren't like, isn't that great? Like,
Yeah. Okay, so then we find out that a transporter ship called the Denver has struck a mine left over from the Cardassian War and sustained heavy damage. Oh no. So like they were going to crash land on a planet, and the Enterprise will be there in like 7 hours. They have like 23 crew members, but they were carrying like 500 other people, other colonists to somewhere else. And Dr. C is like, give me anyone with medical training. Okay, thanks. So then Riker goes to see Picard, and he is super opposed to Worf's request. But Picard, I would say Picard kind of makes an interesting point that I didn't super think of, because it's really easy, you know, for us to be like, oh, you know, like Riker saying like, oh, you know, Worf could live a long and like healthy and productive life, you know, as a paraplegic. But Picard's like, but that's not, like, that's like very human kind of thing.
Yep, that's
Worf
fair.
is not a human. And so to Worf, like to us, that's like, yeah, we can, like, this is not over. There's still like life goes on. There's still things to do. But that's not how Worf was not, that's not his vibe.
Yeah.
And that's not what he like.
I feel like in a vacuum, that's correct. But
That's why I'm saying it's kind of an interesting point, because
Yeah,
on one hand
yeah.
I get it, but at the same time,
it's just
like,
the world we live in. There's a lot of people who basically think their life is over if they have a disability.
yeah.
Well,
And,
okay, the
like-
thing about Star Trek is that it definitely tries to present a future in which those disabilities are not something that is life-ending.
Oh, for sure. It's just this episode, like it I don't think you can separate this episode from the context of the society we live in.
I agree.
Because like
Yeah.
and they don't make enough of a point, like if that's what they're going for, to say like, oh, humans wouldn't react to this way if this happened to them in the hypothetical Star Trek future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. They don't.
Yeah, because this is a human reaction to be like, my life is over, like
Yeah.
all that thing. And
Oh.
I don't know, for me, like-
It's too like final, like it's too like blanket statement-y, because there's humans who will not,
Yeah.
who will, as you said, be like, nope, life's over. And I'm sure there are Klingons, at least a few, who would be like, you know, carry on, or find a way to, you know,
yeah, because I
make
believe
peace
like
with their situation. And
yeah, because to me, it's like, it can become a bit of a gray area where it's like, yeah, you have to like listen and understand and accept other people's beliefs and cultures, and you know, try to come
except
at
for
it.
Riker.
Yeah, try to come at it. Try to come at it from different perspectives and stuff like that. But there's certain things where it's like, I think it's like, yeah, I think with
It's too absolute. Picard's giving too much like absolution to like
I-
these sides when it's not.
I
It's
100%
yeah, I
like that.
made a note of that. The fact that Picard's position, he comes to it a little bit too quickly, and while it is technically true to Picard's character to go towards like respecting somebody's cultural beliefs before anything else, he is jumping to the conclusion that there is absolutely no way that Worf would ever consider any other option, and he hasn't
Yeah.
even spoken to him about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, sometimes you get into trouble with sort of moralizing other people's cultures and stuff. And, so I think, like, when it comes to something like this, like, you have to examine, like, is this cultural bias? Like, am I just not being open-minded? That sort of thing. But I think there's also a point where it's like, no, this is wrong.
Yeah.
you know? There's also a point where it's like, no, fuck culture. Like, this isn't right. I'm not gonna do that. And like, here's the thing. It's like, I think because I like, in Ontario, we have a law, where it's like, basically assisted suicide is, legalized here.
That's across Canada, actually. That was federal.
Oh, it's across Canada?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that was federal.
I wasn't sure if that was just Ontario or Canada.
That's okay.
And, like, that's something I agree with.
Yeah.
You know? But I don't think there's been enough time to fully determine, like, because you have to go through a lot of consultation before they let you do that. And I don't think that that's, like, I think Worf should have to do that.
Yeah.
Like, he hasn't even, like, given that other life a shot, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he's still, like, fresh in the emotions. I don't think there's been enough time for him to process everything yet.
Oh, no, not at all.
You know, he's making this decision really quickly. So I'm just surprised that no one else, that, like, no one has suggested, like, hey, maybe give yourself some time, and then if you still want to do it, we'll help you.
I'm not surprised.
Or something like that.
The episode was about a specific thing, and it needed to skip over some really, like, important points about how we deal with grief and shock in order to get to dealing with the actual ethical point that it wanted to deal with. And I mean, fair enough. I'll give it that. I can't really think of an easy way they could have got around that without having an entirely different premise, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like maybe if it was someone other than Worf, but they also needed it to be somebody that would be really important to the audience.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, basically, I mean, it's like, I'm not objective in this, just straight up, because I'm basically, like, Team Riker, and, like, not just Team Riker, it's like, I feel like I would just, like, the way he's reacting is, I think, how I would react.
I do want to point out something very important to remember about this episode, and that's the fact that it came out in 1992, and the optics around assisted suicide have changed in the mainstream cultural discussion sphere quite a bit since then. Worf's position is really not so outrageous now as it once was. Like in 1992, it essentially would have been like inconceivable to most people. Not to everyone,
for sure.
but at least in the mainstream cultural sphere in North America.
But I think the main difference is that, like, they straight up say that he could get a majority of his mobility back.
Yeah.
And, like, that there are options for him, and that he, like, that's the thing, is that he
Worf's a go big or go home guy.
Yeah, is that there are options for accommodations and, like, assistive devices and stuff, and he doesn't want to do that.
I mean, they could have framed it in a way that the assisted devices would do less for him than they said that it possibly could.
Yeah. Or that it would cause him, like, chronic pain or some shit. Like,
something that made it more... I don't know about pain. Klingon could endure pain. That wouldn't be as much of a problem. But, like...
Yeah, but something...
60 to 70% is... maybe a little high for what they were going for in terms of the point. Like, I think if they had said 50%, which isn't that much lower, but like it's a good like half and half number. I think that would have made it like a little bit more impactful.
Yeah, I just think like with the just given that there were options for him that he didn't even want to give a shot to, I'm like, no, I don't think you should be allowed to end your life in that circumstance. Like, I think you should give it a shot first.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. That's the difference, is if there was no other option, like if he was like fully paralyzed, it's like I'd understand it more. I think I'd still disagree with it, but I'd understand it more. But the fact that there was like options for him to, like, you know, not have the same quality of life, but have a really high quality of life still.
Mm-hmm.
Is like, yeah. Because I think that's what those decisions boil down to, is quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why I think that Worf's decision is not unreasonable. Like, I don't agree with it. But I'm really glad that they, even though they had to do it through a Klingon, I'm glad that they were able to bring up a topic like this and, like, discuss it with a pretty objective approach, all things considered. Like, they really gave his position and the opposing position their fair shake. And I will give that a lot of credit. It's not something that Star Trek does super often. But I would say in this episode, it did a very successful job of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try to get through the rest of this.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, so basically where Riker stands after his talk with Picard is like he does not want to help Worf die, but friendship. So, who knows? Picard's just like, the Klingons do not make friends easily, so consider this a big deal. And Worf. So then, okay, Alexander wants to see Worf, but Worf is like, absolutely not. I feel so bad for Alexander this episode. So Troy is like, tells Alexander that Worf doesn't want to see him because he's embarrassed, and Alexander is like, oh, is this a Klingon thing? And he's like, I just want to see my dad. I'm like, oh my god. So the Troy goes to talk to Worf, and she's like, no, this is like, she gives him some real tough love, and she's like, fuck the honor, see your son. This is like ridiculous. So Dr. C then introduces Toby to Worf, and she's like, oh, we've been discussing your situation, and we can't think of anything that will repair your spinal cord, but they may have found the way to regain much of your mobility. So it's an implanted series of neural transducers into the lower torso and legs. They're designed to pick up electrical impulses from your brain and stimulate the corresponding muscles. And he can eventually regain, as we said earlier, regain 60 to 70% of his motor control. So Toby puts a motor assist unit around Worf's leg, and his leg gives like a shake, but like he's not really into that. So Worf is all or nothing, really, and he's like, oh, people will like look down on him, and he also doesn't want pity. But Dr. C's like, maybe think about it though, please. And then Toby jumps in and is like, hey, have you heard the good word about genetronics? And Dr. C's like, bro, you are taking advantage. Oh, so, okay. So yeah, she tells him a little bit about that shit. Okay, so now cut to Dr. C and Toby, and Dr. C's like, you are taking advantage of this situation. In a normal situation, there's no way you would have this kind of opportunity. And you're just trying to like get in there. And Dr. C checked with Starfleet Medical, because Dr. C does her research. And she learned that they denied Toby's request to try genetronics on humanoids 3 times. And Toby's like, oh, you're going to let some bureaucracy stop us? It's like, yes, in this case, yes. Yeah. So then, Troy takes Alexander to see Worf, and Worf, he's standing there wearing his motor assist bands around, or the units around his legs. And I'm like, oh, that's so nice. And then Worf says, as Klingons, we all must be prepared for. And I feel like in any other show, this would kind of be a gag, but it.
Yeah.
His like, oh, be prepared for, and then Worf falls over. I'm like, that's like full out face first. It was rough. It was upsetting. So Worf wants Alexander to leave because he doesn't want him to see him like this. And yeah. So okay. So now they've got the survivors of the Denver ship thing, and Dr. C is doing her rounds like with the survivors, and then she comes across Toby and a dead person. And they were in like bad shape, and Toby's like, yeah, I couldn't use the standard primary treatment because their blood pressure was too low. And so instead of using other options, she tried her new ribotherapy she's been working with called Barathium. Yeah, that sounds about right. Barathium. And Dr. C is like, sorry, you used this man to test out one of your theories? And Toby's like, yeah. And this is like really like way advanced. In my notes I wrote, this is streets ahead. So Toby's like, this person was in bad shape, so like, don't you think the standard treatment wouldn't work anyways? And Dr. C's like, that's not the fucking point. You didn't even try to do the standard treatment. Or like the alternatives to the standard treatment. You just went rogue. And she's like, how dare you try your patience on these people? And Toby really thinks this is like the most wild like means to an end of like this argument. She's like, oh, my research so then she's like, oh, this will all my work here, this will be invaluable. But fuck the person's life, though. Mm-hmm. And Dr. C says, I will not be drawn into it. Oh, because she's like, okay, in the future, say you have someone like you that you love that then will require this surgery. Will you feel bad then? And Dr. C is like, I will not be drawn into a hypothetical argument. Mm-hmm. Doctor, your research on this ship is over. And Dr. C is seething.
Yeah. She's really badass in this thing. Especially when he's like, I'm not going to get drawn into this hypothetical shit with you.
Yeah, that was such a good line. Mm-hmm. I wrote in my notes, Dr. C is going to cut Toby with her cheekbones.
Yeah. Even though this episode was a bummer, Dr. C looks amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay, so what the fuck did I write? Oh, I wrote Klingon mode. I don't remember what the context of this was. I watched this episode last night and I've already forgotten it.
Oh, because I think...
does Dr. C say this? Klingon mode, it's honorable, strong, and close-minded.
When Picard comes in and he's like, I want to talk to Worf or whatever, she's like, you can try, but he's in full Klingon mode.
He's being a Klingon.
Because in the line after...
Yeah.
Yeah, because after that quote, I wrote, I really missed Picard and Dr. C scenes.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been so long. So Picard thinks Dr. C should let Toby try the procedure on Worf, because otherwise Worf's just gonna wants to die. So
yeah,
I there's not we're stuck between a Worf and a hard place at this point.
Oh, that's not funny.
Oh, Worf, it's not funny, but it just poor Worf. But yeah, Dr. C's like, I will not let him die. She'll put him in a restraining field if she has to.
Yeah.
And she'll put guards. And Picard says he reiterates his point from earlier, but I don't need to do that. So, Picard says, a Klingon may not be good at accepting defeat, but he knows all about taking risks. So Dr. C's like, we're kind of not supposed to make patients worse, and this could possibly make patients worse, and also Toby's making patients worse.
Mm-hmm.
So
I hate that point too, because that goes back to the but sometimes surgery is not 100%.
Yeah.
And it's not even the first time that Dr. C will have tried something experimental on someone before. To be fair, it's always been as a final last resort.
Yeah. And
so
the thing
she
is
definitely is a point. It's just they're going in too hard with being absolutist about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
the thing is that the issue is that not that it's experimental, not that it has a low success rate, but that she's the procedure is straight up just not approved. They're like,
yes.
No, you can't do this on humanoid patients.
They probably should have hammered that point in more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was honestly surprised that she didn't get her medical license taken away by the end of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That feels like that would be the first thing to do.
That's a huge...
that doctor should not be practicing.
Yeah, that's a huge
She
violation.
fucking killed a guy, and she's like, well, listen.
I got
had
good
to try my
data
experience
from it.
on somewhere. Yeah, it's gross. So now Riker comes to see Worf again. And Worf makes it really clear that doesn't care for this. But Riker, for the 7 hours, Riker's done some research. He's read everything about Klingon law and rituals.
Look,
and
he Googled
knows
it. It's
everything.
fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he's obviously an expert. The funniest thing of this episode, in my opinion, is the amount of times that Riker says that he respects other cultures and Worf's culture, and then immediately shits on it.
Yeah.
He does this like 4 times. I think he says it at the beginning to Worf, and then I think he says it to Picard, and he says it here again.
Yeah.
I'm like, Christ, Riker, just stop saying that. I mean, I get what he means, but he just...
Yeah. I think this comes at like... I think this comes back to my point of being like, there's a certain point where it's like not about respecting culture anymore.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
agree.
so there's... I mean, I hesitate to say that this is necessarily the culture, but like, you know, there are countries where like being gay is a death penalty, and there's lots of homophobia like within the culture and stuff. There's lots of homophobia within our own culture still. You know, like for example, like I'm Polish, and in Poland it's very anti-LGBT. It's like it's not good over there. And so I would be like, to me, it's like, no, I'm not going to respect their culture when it involves, like, you know, being degrading to, like, this minority group.
I think
you know?
the point is that, like, cultural respect stops where it removes my own dignity.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, there's other things, too, where it's, like... I think this is an issue where you can have a reasonable disagreement saying, like, I don't think this is about respecting culture. I think this is just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, like, cultures aren't like, not all cultures are correct, like, about things. Like...
Yeah, everyone's got shit that's like not great.
Yeah,
Yep.
North American culture is wrong about a lot of things. Canadian culture is wrong about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think just because it's someone's culture doesn't make it right. Mm-hmm. And Riker's also correct in that, like, sure, he can respect the belief, but he doesn't have to participate in it.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
It's like making Riker do this thing he disagrees with is, like, not cool either.
Yeah, that's disrespecting
Yes.
his culture.
Yeah.
Why is it
And
that, like, Star Trek does
sorry,
this...
I just
Sorry.
I just have one last point I really want to hammer home before we go. And I think, like, if you're I think it's important, especially within the context of, like, human history, and, like, especially the history of, like, people with you know, colonialist ties and people who benefit from white privilege and yada yada yada, that we examine, like, whether, like, why we're calling something in someone else's culture wrong. Like, I think it's we should interrogate that. But I think that, like, there are some instances where it's like, no, that's just not right.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
So I just wanted to make that clear, because, like, there's been a lot of justifications for fucked up shit being like, no, your culture's wrong, and that this is disgusting, and that sort of thing. So, but when it was like just they were being assholes.
Star Trek does this a lot, and it's not even close to the last time that we're going to see this, but respecting somebody else's culture in Star Trek always means degrading yourself in some like taking part in some either really silly or incredibly demeaning ritual, and it's considered super disrespectful if, like, the Federation people do not respect this culture by wearing a silly hat or something like that. But if you show up to what do you call it? If you show up to on a Federation starship and you are walking around naked and people are uncomfortable with it, sorry, you got to respect their culture. And it's like, when do they have to respect ours, though?
Yeah.
And it just never seems to be a point where they have to respect our culture.
Yeah. I think that probably comes from this this want to sort of sort of correct the sort of colonialist attitude of like, our culture is right and we are going to make the natives assimilate and that sort of shit.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, so I think within the context of Star Trek and like in a vacuum, it's like, yeah, what the fuck? Why does no one ever have to respect human culture? But I think within the context of our world, I kind of get it, where it's like, it is kind of a statement to be like, hey, these like white explorers are not forcing their culture onto anyone else.
Right.
Okay, so Riker brings out a cloak and a big ass dagger, and Riker decides to go for the deepest cut, and he's like, hey, remember all these people that died, i.e. Marla Astor, who I remembered, that was the kid's mom.
I was gonna say, I'm really glad you remembered.
I remembered that.
I wonder what happened to the kid. Since he's part of the House of Moog now, apparently.
Oh boy, that was upsetting. And then he says Tasha Yar. I was like, whoa, wow.
Yeah, that's a deep cut there.
Wow. And Riker's like, how many people like owe their life to you, and how many people do we have we watched die? For you to then go and make this decision. And like, also his argument is like, but this is going to affect so many people that like your death will affect so many people. And that, like, how do you think, like, we're gonna feel like fucking shit?
I don't love that argument. I've heard it before, regards to like people considering suicide, that it's like really selfish. And like, okay, fine, but at that point, it's somebody seeking like a release for themselves, so it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Riker then reveals that, he looked into this amongst all his studying. He looked into this ritual in particular, and it turns out the honor of killing Worf,
the honor of it,
goes to hey, I think that was Riker's words. Those aren't my words. Yeah. Maybe, I think Riker said honor.
I think he did too.
It goes to a family member, in particular the oldest son, and I was like, no fucking way. And then it's like, Riker's like, hey, should I go get Alexander? And I'll give him the knife that you guys can like stab in the heart together, and then he can wipe your blood on his sleeve. How about that? And Worf's like, he's a child, and Riker's like, well, don't they say the son of a Klingon is a man the day he can first hold a blade? And Worf's like, yeah, but he's part human. And Riker's like, bullshit.
That is legit. He's like, that's bullshit. That is an excuse. I agree.
Yeah. And Riker goes, that's an excuse. What you really mean is that it would be too hard to look at your son and tell him to bring you the knife, watch you stab it into your heart, pull the knife out of your chest, and wipe your blood on his sleeve. So that's the rite of death. And Worf is like, oh, fuck no. And so he calls in Alexander, and I legit was like, Worf, you better fucking not. Yeah. Thankfully he doesn't. I was like, you had me for like a second. And
which is weird, because my memory of this episode is that he does ask Alexander to do it.
But this is a Mandela effect situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a Mandela effect. But I'm glad he doesn't.
Yeah, so Worf is like, listen, don't worry. I'm going to do this super risky surgery. So I might still die in the end, but I just want you to know it won't be, if I die, it won't be by my own hand. Now, here, take my huge knife.
Yeah.
That's bigger than your head, and go put it back in our room. Like that knife was legit taller than Alexander's head.
Yeah.
Because he holds it in front of his face.
Yeah.
So Alexander then like turns back at Worf when he's walking out the room and gives like a really creepy smile. And I'm like, is that boy gonna go stab someone with that big ass knife? I don't think he does. We haven't heard anything, so I'm gonna assume he doesn't.
He might.
So okay. So Dr. C then is like, fine, I guess we're fucking doing the surgery. YOLO at this point. And so then Worf is talking to Troy before he goes in, and he's like, if anything happens to me, I want you to raise Alexander. I was like, oh wow. And if he dies, and he has a great respect for her and can't imagine anyone else being a better parent for his son, which is like very nice. But I wrote, Troy's mouth says I'd be honored, but her face says, Worf, you better fucking make it. Troy is like,
I could not see that.
Because that is a lot of responsibility, and that is a rough position to be in.
Yeah, I like, man, they really got it. They're really taking turns traumatizing this child.
Yeah, like, she really didn't have a choice in her answer there, honestly.
Yeah. She literally was stuck between Worf and a hard place. And so, so then we go into surgery, and they're wearing the scary red surgical outfits, which I remember we have seen before.
Yes, we have.
Doesn't make them any less terrifying.
Yeah, the fucking dead ringer costumes.
It won't be the last time we see them. We actually see them in another series later on.
Yeah.
They make it to DS9.
Ooh. Okay, so now we cut to Picard and Riker. They're having like a talk about just like, menial things with the ship. And then they do a wild close-up on Picard's face where he's just like staring at Riker. And then they cut to a very close-up of Riker staring at Picard's face. And I wrote, kiss.
Yes.
I mean, they were like, they're like, well, have we heard anything? And like, no.
Back to Jean-Will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So they're mostly just, they needed the close-ups to be worried about Worf, which is fair. So now we're in the OR, and there is some difficulty with the scan of the spinal column. So when they have the spinal, listen, I don't claim to be a genius, but the first thing I thought of when they had his spinal column out and that it was being scanned was, like a dinosaur.
Yeah. I mean, those are their spines.
I was just like, yes, a bone. That means dinosaur.
Yeah.
Because all bones are like...
All bones are dinosaurs.
Yep.
All bones go to heaven.
Yep. So they're basically 3D printing a new spinal column inside of Worf.
Yes.
And then everything starts failing. You guys, they really got me.
Yeah.
They did get me for this part. So everything's just like terrible. And Dr. C, cool as a motherfucking cucumber. She's just like, okay, we do this. Now we do this. Now we do this. And then I wrote, Toby girl bossed a little too close to the sun at this point. This was like, listen, dream big, but this was too big. And then, oh my God, when Dr. C called like time of death, I started to cry.
Yeah. I figured
like logically, here's the thing. Logically, I know Worf comes back.
Course.
I got the season 7 tray. We've been over this. I know everybody makes it to season 7.
Yeah.
So, but still, tears came out of my eyeballs.
Yeah.
I was sad.
I mean, after Tasha,
really
you never
sad.
know, right?
Well, I did know, but I still cried. Listen, I got a little Worf sitting on my desk staring at me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they really make you believe it. Like because like most shows, it's like the line beeps and like then they're like, okay, time of death is 1240 hours, and then like immediately they start like coming alive again. But no, they like drag it out pretty long.
They do, yeah.
Oh yeah, they call it. Because honestly, you know what gets me is they fucking keep bringing Alexander in to see his dead parents.
Yeah. Well, no.
So they're like,
to be fair,
well, Alexander
Alec
wants to see him.
Yeah, he
Yes,
demanded.
He does. Yes, he wanted to see him. And just like, this is so fucking heartbreaking. Just watching Alexander in this scene, and so then we're sort of just sitting there, and all of a sudden, one of Worf's backup organs kicks in, and he wakes up, and Worf be kicking again. He's doing great.
They're like, oh, he must have a backup for his synaptic functions too.
Yeah, Worf is
which doesn't turn on until afterwards for some reason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess sometimes it takes a while for the backups to do their thing.
No, come on! Don't
they needed
give
to
them an excuse.
They needed to turn it off and turn it on again.
No, it's
Yeah.
stupid.
It is dumb, but I'm glad Worf's alive.
Yes. Okay, so now like surgery's done. Toby and Dr. C. Toby goes to see Dr. C, and Toby wants words of affirmation because the surgery was successful. But Dr. C is like, bitch, you are lucky. This was like, your survival rate is not great. And this was just like a fucking fluke. Like, oh, she just keeps roasting her. She just keeps shitting on her and was like, honestly, keep fucking going. This woman does not care about people's lives.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because she just is like, oh, you risk your patients' lives for research. That fucking sucks. So then Dr. C says, I'm sure your work will be hailed as a stunning breakthrough. Enjoy your laurels, doctor. I'm not sure I could.
Ooh.
The shade of it all.
Yeah.
So now we cut to Worf doing physiotherapy in his stripy pajamas.
Yeah.
I love it's a pajama suit. I love pajama suits. They're the best. And Alexander, like, Worf falls, and they're like, no, Alexander, let him do it himself. And Worf's like, actually, I've had some character development this episode. So I'd like Alexander to come over and you know,
I've had some character development.
stand in
this
front of me.
episode, unlike Alexander.
So
Well, he's a child. Children don't have character development.
That's fair.
yeah, Worf had the character development. So when he got his system reboot, the character development kicked in.
Yeah.
Well, no, he did have character. He
patched
did like
Worf.
to make he To be fair, he did make some decisions before he had the surgery.
Yeah.
So listen, I'll take the development. I love a Worf evolution.
Worfollution.
Yeah.
I love that despite being like what do you call it? Despite being like a future sci-fi show, they still found a way to do the clear like horse shit that every fucking medical drama has ever done.
The defibrillator.
Yeah.
Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. We love a good medical trope.
Yeah.
We're losing him. Quick.
Yeah, in Star Trek, instead
100
of
cc's of something.
yeah, instead of Star Trek, or in Star Trek, instead of a defibrillator, it's a cortical stimulator.
Yes.
Ah.
Which stimulates your cerebral cortex.
Yeah.
Ooh, party.
Party in the cortex.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, this was an interesting episode.
It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even like. I don't know what to say. I'm not sure where I stand for some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was okay. I will say though, this was way heavier than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
This was did not. Okay. I didn't say this last episode, but at the end of last episode, Maggie asked for if I wanted to guess who this happens to.
Mm-hmm.
And I said I didn't want to guess at the time, but after we stopped recording,
Yeah.
I said to Maggie and Jeff, it's going to be either Riker or Worf.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
Because those are the two people who take risks.
Yeah.
Coincidentally, weirdly though, this actually wasn't a risk by any means. It's just a fluke accident, like it's just an accident. But I did say I thought it was going to be Riker or Worf.
You did indeed.
Yeah. for the right answer for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the opposite of Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Or it is Jeopardy. Anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like
it's interesting.
Yeah. So I just want to make it clear that if anyone like agrees with Worf or like is like no, like Worf should totally be allowed to do that, like I just, because I'm paranoid, I just want to make it clear I don't think like anyone who agrees with that is like a bad person or anything. It's just like, to me, I feel very strongly about it that I super disagree with that. And that I would not, like, if a friend asked me to help, I wouldn't, because I just can't.
I do think that that's actually kind of the for me, the not the most interesting part, but a thing is that, like, it's one thing if Worf wanted to, you know, die and, you know, he was going to do it himself or whatever, but the fact that he asked Riker
to basically
do this
it,
for
yeah.
him is kind of, that's where he kind of loses me.
Yeah,
is
I
like,
agree. I agree.
I didn't want Worf to kill himself. Mm-hmm. But, like, if that's what he truly wanted, like, I don't agree with it, but if that's what he truly wanted, then, like, I guess carry on.
I would try to
like,
convince
you gotta
him
do that
not
yourself.
to, but I would never tell him that it was
but
flat
to ask
out
Riker
wrong
to do
want
this?
to do it. But yeah, saying, "Hey, you bring me this," is a
Yeah.
Okay, well that's where that's where our shit ends, because you're asking me to take an active role in it now.
Yeah.
It's not just
That
bring
thing
me
to
the
that's
gun.
Fucked.
It's worse than that. It's bring me the gun and approve of it. Like,
And,
sign off
you know,
on this for me, basically.
And cock it for me too, please,
Yes.
while you're at it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I the thing that I dislike the most is the fact that he wanted to get Riker in on this.
Yeah.
And listen, there's a lot of things you want to be included in with your friends, but I'd say this is not one of them.
I would agree with that.
And the thing is like, yeah. One of the things is like people with, how do I say this? Basically, when it comes to suicide, sometimes it's like, it doesn't actually necessarily help to tell people that it's like, oh, but, you know, life can still be good and all that stuff. A lot of times it's like, it's much more useful to be like, yeah, your life sounds like it sucks. Like, that does sound like it sucks.
Yeah.
Because weirdly enough, like, that is like, it's validating, right? And it's not necessarily, like, everyone's different, but like, a lot of times it's like someone just needs someone to acknowledge that, like, hey, yeah, this is shit, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, like, my pain is being heard, you know? And a lot of times it's like, you know, this isn't necessarily true for everyone, so I don't want to say, like, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but it's one of those things, it's like, you don't, like, a lot of times people say, like, you don't want to die, you just want the pain to stop, is a sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like acknowledging that pain and like being like, yeah, this sucks, let's see if we can manage it or whatever, can be much more useful than just being like, oh, like, no, it's so good and everything's great, that sort of thing.
Like, in the end,
there's nothing
false, like, what's the
Hope?
word for it? No, it's not false hope, but like, false sincerity doesn't really help anyone. It's
Yeah.
like it might.
Was it toxic positivity or something?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the term
Fall
for
into
it.
that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the reason I bring that up is because I feel like no one did that with Worf. Being like, yeah, this is going to be hard and it sucks and all that stuff.
Yep.
They're mostly like, listen, you can still live like a pretty good life.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Come on. Just get over it.
Yeah, it seemed like no one really met Worf on his level.
Definitely.
Yeah.
True.
Where he was coming from. But it was also like, it was very clear that one of the reasons Worf didn't want Alexander to see is like, Like, I believe him when he's like, you know, I don't want my son to see me in this condition. It's shameful. But I also think it's like he couldn't... The more he sees Alexander, I think he knows the less he'd want to die.
That's a good point, actually.
Which is why I think Riker brought that up. It's like, it's like, you know, you love Klingon tradition so much, and yet, you know, you don't want to get Alexander involved in this, which is like what the tradition says.
Yep.
Right? It's like, because you can't look him in the face and say, I want to die. And do it for me. Or I think Riker reveals the actual ritual is like that you just bring them the knife and then they do it themselves.
But you're supposed to like stay there and watch and all this.
And then you have to wipe the blood on your sleeve.
Yeah. And so Jeff, I definitely agree with your point about Riker being like, oh, you're not thinking about how this affects everyone else on the ship. That's kind of a shitty argument to make. Because it does really put, when people do that argument, it's like, oh, but what about your family and stuff that'll miss you and things, and like calling suicide selfish and all that stuff. It really like does more harm.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Because what I think a lot of the time, what people, I think you kind of sort of touched upon this, Maggie, is like when people are feeling bad. We're like, I mean, from my own experience, like I'm not looking to be cheered up.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for solutions. I'm looking for
validation,
you know, validation. And I'm just want someone to either like, you know, like either listen to me or just be like, as you said, like, yeah, that sucks. Or just like be on my side. I just want someone on my side. I'm not looking for solutions. I'm not looking for ideas. I'm not looking for optimism. I'm looking for like support. I'm looking for an ally. Yeah. Not a let's turn that frown upside down. No, just frown with me. That's what I want.
Oh God,
exactly.
This reminded me of something terrible. Dory, I hope that you never have to witness this, or if you do witness it, that we spend a lot of time making fun of it. But Maggie, this reminded me of fucking Star Trek V. Your pain runs deep. Share it with me.
Oh yeah. Oh God.
Oh boy. Yeah, though.
Yeah. I mean, yes, but in the context of the movie, it's very funny.
Yes, absolutely.
Because he's basically using, like, it's a surprise sibling in that movie. I think it's like Spock's secret brother or whatever.
It's Spock's secret half-brother, yeah.
Yeah, and he basically, like, is using, mind melds to, like, indoctrinate people into his cult. Where they go to find God or whatever.
Yes, they have to go to the center of the universe
Sarek's
to find
side?
God. It's not really clear, but yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Sarek
got around.
God.
Yeah.
Seems like.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like it.
Yeah. So, yeah, in that movie, they have to fly to the center of the galaxy to find God.
As one does.
Yeah.
You know.
Let's be perfectly fair.
Which gives birth to the...
The three good Star Trek movies were written by one guy, and then they were like, hey, Shatner really wants to do a movie. And they're just like, okay, let him, I guess. And so he wrote about that.
He did Star Trek V, yeah. William Shatner directed that.
Wow.
Although
and
it gave... It, oh, he did... Yeah, that makes sense. But that movie does give birth to the brilliant line. Jeff?
Yep. What does God need with a starship?
Yeah.
What? God wants to use the holodeck.
Yeah. Well,
it's his turn. It's their turn.
Yeah, they get to God, quote unquote, and he's like, "I want the Enterprise." And
what? Why?
yeah, that's exactly what Kirk says. It's like, what does God need with a starship?
But actually, what's the answer, though? What did God...
He's not actually
He's
God.
not
He's
actually
just
God.
some powerful alien, and he's trying to escape his prison of whatever planet this is.
Oh.
He's impersonating God.
As one does.
Yeah.
does God want with the starship?
No, what does God
Listen, I
need
ask myself-
with a starship?
Oh,
Yeah.
of course. I ask myself the same question every day. Wild.
What a
was I gonna say?
god-awful
Oh,
movie.
yeah. When Riker's making his argument, one argument that I feel like would be able to get to Worf, is not like, oh, it's like, think about, like, how everyone else would feel. It would be like, oh, so you think so little of us that we would pity you? Like, you think that we would just, like, you think we would disrespect you so much that we would, like, see you as, like, this pitiful person?
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, his friends would not do that.
Yeah. And it's like, I think although Worf does confuse sympathy for pity, I think, a lot of the time.
That's actually a good point. He
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that,
But-
too. So maybe
yeah,
he wouldn't
but-
accept it.
Yeah. But I think that would have been a good point for, like, I think that could have, like, hit to Worf's character
Yeah,
if he made that kind of an argument.
yeah,
And
I think I agree with that.
Yeah. I think it is still kind of manipulative and guilting, but it's less like you're selfish for this. It's be like, think better of us,
Yes.
I guess. It's still not great, I have to admit, but I think, like, if you're trying to reach Worf,
I think it's quite an
I think-
improvement. Which, yeah, I mean, to be fair, in that situation, it is not your job to be objective to your friend. Like,
Yeah.
they want your emotional support for something. You don't have to be objective about emotional support.
yeah. Yeah, true. I also like, oh shit, he made like 3 arguments, I think. There was the think about your friends, which we discussed. There was,
Let me take a look at my notes. How many people have they watched die?
yeah, okay,
that-
yeah, there was a point I wanted to bring up about that.
It
Because,
was like, yeah,
he's like-
Marla Astor, Yar.
yeah, because he was saying, like, every single one of those people that died fought to the last second to live. And now Worf is like, you're just gonna give it up, you know? So, I thought that was kind of a good argument, like,
Yeah.
for this specific situation.
Well, I mean, okay, wait, let's be perfectly fair here. Yar's last second to live was pretty much instantaneous with just being regular Yar.
Yeah,
So she didn't really get a choice to live or die there. She just was suddenly dead.
yeah, that's fair. But I think, like, Riker's point still stands.
Yeah. And wait, sorry, the way that she suddenly died was with a weird Gorbachev stain on her face.
Yeah,
Not stain. You know what I mean.
yeah.
The thing.
Although, alternate Yar did fight to live, though.
That's a good point. Yes, she did.
Yeah. She went on a suicide mission, but she didn't, like, she didn't have a death wish.
No.
And when the opportunity came up to try to, like, save people and herself, she took it.
Yep.
Like, despite it being a really fucked up situation.
Oh, yeah. Let's not get
Yeah.
into discussing what's wrong with that again.
No. And, yeah, when her death came about, it was, like, not her choice.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. This just popped into my head when you're talking about Yar. This is terrible. But, you know what we should call what's her face? Yar's doppelgaughter.
Oh, yeah. Sela?
Sela, yeah.
Oof.
Doppelgaughter.
Oh, that's really
Sorry.
funny.
Sorry.
Doppelgaughter
It just
is a
popped in
good.
my head.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, yeah, I was like, oh, the doppelgaughter
Yeah.
did it. Yeah, sorry, that was... Anywho.
Yeah, I feel like is it just me, or does it feel like Picard didn't know the full situation to why that other doctor was like super sketchy?
He was really disconnected from everything that was happening in the episode and seemed to just exist to hammer in the point about Worf.
Do you know what it felt like? It felt like not Worf. It felt like Picard took an edible and then just shit happened around him.
Yeah.
Because he was so not like emotionally invested in anything in this episode, really.
Yeah. Because I feel like if this was a different episode, we'd get a Picard speech about how research has been used to justify many atrocities throughout history.
Yep, I would agree with that. We would definitely get a speech.
Yeah, we'd get a speech and he'd say that exact line, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Instead in this, he was like, you should do it.
Yeah. He was like, no
do
thought.
the surgery.
Yeah, no thought. It's like, just do it. It's like, okay. No,
it is in line with Picard previously respecting his wishes regarding, remember giving blood to a Romulan?
Oh yeah, that's correct. But that was an issue of like, you should not be made to sacrifice yourself or something from yourself for somebody else.
Yes, definitely.
So that's why like Riker shouldn't be forced to like participate in this ritual.
Yep.
Right. And not that Picard was forcing him or whatever, but he very much seemed like even if you find this morally repugnant, you should just do it. Like,
yeah,
which I think
that
is
did
such a
seem
weird
to be
take.
the position he was taking. It's like I said, he seemed to exist in this episode in order to be that point.
Yeah.
And I like, that's fine. Sometimes you need that. The episode was pretty jam-packed, all things considered. I don't think there's anything that could have been like really changed or removed from it. It's a pretty tight episode.
Yeah, it is.
So like, I think that there isn't anything I would add. There are things that I wish... No, sorry. There isn't anything I would change. There are things I would like to add if time were more forgiving.
Yes, yeah.
You know what I would have liked? I would have liked to see Worf interact with like Data and Geordi.
Mm-hmm.
In this,
oh yeah,
like,
there was no Data in this
him
episode.
being injured. We see Data for like 1 second.
Oh, okay.
But like,
oh yeah, at the beginning.
I think when they talk about the Denver.
Yeah.
I think, but like, yeah, I would have liked to see what kind of like perspective Data would have had on like conversation with Worf about this.
Yeah.
And same with Geordi. Geordi is his friend as well.
And Geordi lives with a disability.
Yeah, so, and we just had an episode about the genetics, the people who don't
the people
you know,
with
the wording. You know what I mean.
Yeah, the eugenics
people.
colony.
Yes. The words were failing me. Yeah, so I would have really liked to sort of have everybody kind of because Worf sort of interacts differently with everybody, right?
Yeah.
So like, it would have been nice to sort of also hear everybody's perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
On this, because I think like between like Data and Geordi, they'd probably have very different perspectives from like very different,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
they're very different people, but like,
yeah,
it would have been more interesting to just because we don't even we get Riker.
Yeah.
Which like, yay for Riker, but like
yeah.
Love to see Riker, but yeah, it would have been nice to make it a little bit more of a like ensemble.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I would have liked that.
Yeah. One last criticism I think is that like, I get why the episode did it this way, but I feel like we didn't really get a lot of Worf in this episode, even though the episode is about a thing that happened to him.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, it felt very like the Doctor storyline was A,
yeah,
and Worf was B.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
let's give this thing its fair shake. The episode
Sorry,
is
a
called
1.5.
yeah,
So it like medical ethics are actually the A plot.
yeah. Yeah, I guess I never thought about that, yeah. I guess it was supposed to be the A plot.
Mm-hmm. The
I feel
A
like
plot.
Yeah. I feel like...
Boo.
Yeah, all right. I think we've explored a lot, and this episode's getting long, so we should move on.
Yeah, I think
so
we've
now
done
time
about all we
for-
can.
Yep. Now time for favorite moments and lines.
I don't know. I'm just looking through my notes. I like when Dr. C was roasting Toby.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that as well.
And honestly, just Dr. C in this episode was great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, I did like that the last bit, Alexander helping Worf with his physio, that was really nice.
Oh, yeah.
I liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of it for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like all those things as well. I thought Troy was really good in this episode also. There's a line she has where she's unfortunately she is making another like it boils down to like she's basically making a "you're selfish for doing this" argument. But the part of it that I like, she's like, maybe think about your fucking son. Mm-hmm. You know, and she really like she says it like really firmly. Like
I think
yeah.
What do you call it? You know what? There's a difference between think of your friends and think of your young family that you are responsible for raising. That is like that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
So I would argue that while it is technically by the strictest sense a manipulative statement, she is 100% correct in saying it because it's a difference between your personal connections in life and your actual responsibility.
Yeah, yeah. I wasn't a fan of the way she said it because she said like, you know, let me just pull it up. Maybe it's time you stop lying here and start thinking about someone else, like your son. You know, so I didn't love the first half of it, but I like the point she was making.
Okay, fair enough.
It's a semantic argument.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really liked that, and I liked how firm she was with it and everything. And yeah, I love Dr. Crusher roasting this other lady and stuff, and thought Riker was really good. I thought everyone did a really good job in this episode. Except Picard, because he's just like kind of there.
Yes,
he phoned it in.
Yeah, he's like
he calmed in.
Yeah, he's like, there's like someone needs to have the opposite view, and I guess I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's what do you call it? It's the scene that Dr. C has in the triage room.
Oh yeah.
With Toby, I thought that was really well done. I like the fact that she is like fucking furious with her, and that point really does just kind of slam into the fact that she is laid out as having like a somewhat reasonable position before that, and then just, oh, by the way, I'm doing experiments on people without their permission, and it's like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? You are actually 100% wrong. It wasn't even mildly sketchy.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I feel like they should have put more emphasis on that.
I definitely agree with that, but in that scene, I really enjoyed it. Dr. C's reaction is suddenly just like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. All right, now time for predictions for the next episode. So the next episode is called The Outcast. And I'm using the Netflix description here. Because I think it's the best. Riker falls for a member of an androgynous race who lost a couple of their people in an unmapped region of space.
Hey, that rhymed.
Yeah.
Androgynous race, region of space.
Outer. Well, I think Riker's gonna fall for an androgynous.
Well, the fact that this species is androgynous and essentially like genderless for all intents and purposes is pretty important to the episode.
Ooh. Okay.
So it's a TV show. So what problems do you think will arise?
Oh boy. Well, okay, let me think. It's the early 90s.
Yeah.
So okay, so maybe okay. So they go to a planet.
Really?
We haven't done that in a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe okay, I've used this a couple of times, but listen. It's fine. Who's going to stop me? And maybe some kind of like natural disaster starts to happen. So like the Enterprise, like the crews managed to get like some people on, and they're trying to they're like, okay, if something happens, we go to this rendezvous point, but other people can't get on the Enterprise, so they do their own like escape. But like the Enterprise gets to the meeting spot first, and like they're waiting, and while they're waiting for the other people who haven't shown up and they were supposed to be there already, that's when Riker
turns on the old Riker charm.
yeah.
And a bone for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they kind of are like, okay, well, this, like, they're not showing up. Something must have went wrong. And then they go find them. And maybe something like on the takeoff from the planet, there was like some kind of, not a mechanical error, but like something, one of the like systems failed or something. So they just ended up floating away. And so then the Enterprise are like, well, let's go fucking track them down then. And maybe they have like a they start to try to leave like a trail. So they're following the trail. I don't know, this is a mess. Anywho. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, if you'd like to see if Dory's correct, watch along with us and join us for the next episode of Fully Functional, a TNG podcast.
Goodbye.